Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is June 6th, the first show of Pride Month. And my name is Tsukuru Force. For those who don't know me, the host of Project True, which was inspired my own coming out as transgender and start transitioning at age 50. What that happened last July. I'm on something like 300, I don't know, 10th day or whatever, since the start of my transition. Yeah, so yeah, this show really is about for and about transgender, non-binary folks to tell our own stories in our own voices, and breaking this sort of stereotype of what transgender man should be, transgender woman should be. I just wanted to diversify the conversations about being transgender and non-binary. So today, I'm really excited because I thought a lot about what I'm going to do for Pride Month, which I actually don't want to emphasize too much. I have a kind of I have a mixed feelings about Pride Month because frankly, like all 12 months of the year should be Pride Month.
Mhm.
So it doesn't have to be a month of June, but it's also like my birth month as well, so it's very special to me. Anyhow, so I'm very excited to have you back, Casey. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm always happy to be back.
Yeah. So you were on about, I don't know, like a month and a half ago, I think.
Yeah, roughly about a month ago.
Yeah. And so I was telling Casey before we went live. So I've been finding out. I've been doing this show like since February, and it often happens that my guest and I will be chatting, and like 45 minutes, 50 minutes into the show, and this show is like 60 minutes. So like towards the very end of the show, guests say something that really pique my interest, and I'm like, oh, we really do not have time to talk about this, but I have to bring you back. And that happened with Casey. So I'm just really grateful that she's back with me. um, and also, Casey, you just had your primaries, and you were running for the Peace of Justice
Mhm.
in Washington County, Arkansas.
Mhm.
And I mean, unfortunately, you did not, well, win, as people say, but in my eyes, you are so victorious for having done this. And I'm so, I just want to thank you for your courage and for your dedication, because I think, including myself, I think you inspired a lot of people. You empowered a lot of us. So
Yeah,
thank you.
definitely. Thank you so much. Yeah, and that's kind of what I got after the campaign. I got a lot of emails and comments from people saying that the message was really inspiring and that, it really motivated them to be active in politics and also just kind of be aware of some of the politicians, that are running for office in our area and also just across the country too. So I
Mhm.
think, even though it wasn't a successful campaign in that, getting to office and getting over 50% of the vote, it was still very successful in motivating people, getting people engaged and excited about progressive policies,
Mhm.
and hopefully motivating people to, run for office in their area.
Yeah, that's just really wonderful. Hi, Steve. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, you actually touched on something really like what I see in my friends' campaigns in LA as well. It's so nice to see that people who have never been really interested in politics,
Mm.
get excited about politics because of certain candidate. And I've seen that happening, in this election cycle. And so I mean, whatever happens, so California primaries is tomorrow. So whatever happens with the candidates that I know, a lot of my friends are running, and I don't know what outcome will be for them. But whatever happens, having people excited about politics and like having people involved in the governing of their state or city or country, I think it's a great thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like the other thing too is I think with more people running for office, especially in marginalized communities, that's getting more representation in government. Whether it's local, state, or federal government, it's getting these voices in and making sure that government's paying attention to some of the policies that are affecting these people. So it's not just the same voices kind of saying the same thing over and over again. It's fresh voices, fresh ideas coming in and offering different perspectives. So, even if campaigns don't win their office or their election, it's still kind of bringing these ideas to the table and still motivating people to pay attention to these ideas too. So, I definitely endorse anybody that's going to be running for office to, better their community, to work to make sure that other people are taken care of, and just trying to make a positive change in the area.
Hi, Dolores. Thank you so much for tuning in. So before we went live today, again, like something you said, like really kind of interested me because okay, so I was telling you about a friend of mine who ran for Congress and he terminated his campaign. But well, okay, so what I observed, as a because I was involved in his campaign, actively for a while, and what shocked me was the kind of money that you have to raise to be kind of taken seriously. Because I heard these conversations that like, oh, so and so, raised like x dollar amount, x amount of money, and so therefore, he's a serious candidate. Or like I heard the opposite as well, like, well, she's not like raising enough, so she's not a serious candidate. And it shocked me because I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right to me, because like how can like ordinary people like me, run for the office then? Like, I mean, because that makes politics a rich people's game, and that sounds like really wrong to me. So
Exactly.
I was like actually really discouraged by witnessing this. But then you mentioned that like, it's really actually not the case. Like, you don't necessarily have to raise, so much money to, you know, um, run for an office. So I just wanted you to kind of elaborate on that, because that actually is very encouraging to me to listen. So
Yeah, definitely. I think it really depends on the election that's happening and the location, and how big the district is. So in Washington County, the Justice of the Peace, I was going through some of the donor records, and a lot of the campaign contributions were well under $1,000. There were some that raised up to $900, and there were some that only raised like $180. My campaign raised about $250, and I ended up spending $1,000. A lot of it coming out of my own money to finance my campaign. So it's kind of affordable if you're going to invest in it on like smaller elections or smaller campaigns. But then we look at bigger cities and bigger districts. I think back when Elizabeth Warren ran for her district in Massachusetts, she was raising and spending over $1 million for that race, and that was only getting more and more expensive, especially after Citizens United. So if you're going against like a long-term incumbent, or if you're going for like a Senate seat, you have to effectively raise a ton of money, millions of dollars, and spend millions of dollars to really compete with your opponent. But at the same time, I think we've been seeing candidates who have been successful doing a grassroots approach to it. We saw, most famously with AOC, where it was less of focusing on fundraising and donors and more of just bringing the message to individual people and connecting with communities and doing sort of a word of mouth type advertising. So it's more focused on just kind of meeting the people on the streets, talking with them directly, it's a little bit harder to reach them like through mailers or through advertisements online and on TV, but you're getting this more personal approach. And I think it builds stronger relationships regardless of the outcome of the election. It's building a tighter knit community. It's getting people more aware of things, and it's making just like the campaign a little bit more personal, as opposed to just like this person that's randomly running for office, or like this rich person, this rich politician that's kind of going.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think okay, I don't want to make it about age, so I would refrain from saying like young people, but I think the first time candidate, I think local politics is like really great place to start.
Absolutely.
And it's so important too. It's like I never realized how local politics is, how important it is. Because so I was just a permanent resident, not a citizen of this country for the longest time. So I confess I did not get to vote for much of my adult life, because I came to this country when I was 19. So, and I became a citizen just 3 years ago.
Okay.
So, but I mean, ever since I became a citizen, I got to sort of learn, about politics here and getting involved. And like, yeah, I mean, city politics, even like your neighborhood, council. I mean, it's so important because it just really touches on like every day of your life. Like what
Absolutely.
happens in a very like yeah.
Yeah, especially with bigger cities like New York, Los Angeles, Seattle, a lot of those like local elections have such a massive role, and even in less populated areas. So like right now, actually got updates this week that the Washington County Republicans are looking for $100 million jail expansion, which a lot of that money could be going towards rent relief, going towards, food assistance, going towards utility assistance, and things like that. And, this comes after the state of Arkansas rejected $147 million in federal aid that was supposed to go towards tenants to take care of like rental needs and, paying off bills and things like that. And, I think if people aren't aware of electoral or local politics, I keep on saying electoral, local politics, they miss out on a lot of these things, these very important policies that are kind of getting passed that people aren't really aware of. Preventing a ton of money getting wasted and spent on things that we don't need right now. We need to focus on getting relief to people, making sure that they're housed, that they're fed, that they are able to pay their bills, that they have the resources that they need. And local politics is the best way of kind of ensuring people have those resources and that they have those support systems.
So Brandy is saying, what district in Washington County is Kacee running for? 18? What's
District 8.
8, okay. Right. Yeah. How big is Washington County?
I want to say it was like, I want to guess like a little over 200,000 people, I think. It's made up of, the dominant cities are Fayetteville, Springdale, and then we have like quite a bit of suburbs around the area, and then we have some other cities kind of like on the outskirts, so like Silent Springs, West Fork, a lot of those kind of more rural places, or kind of detached from like the more suburban center of the county. And then just up north we have Benton County, and that's home to Bentonville, Rogers, Bella Vista, basically the hub of Walmart there.
Right.
So I think it's roughly almost about 250,000 people.
So what's your district like? I mean, meaning that, okay, so I confess, I lived ever since I came to this country, I lived in Pennsylvania for 1 year. I lived in California, mostly in California. So like I've been in this country for 32 years. So 1 year in Pennsylvania, let's see, 5 years in San Francisco, 22 years or 21 years in LA. So like most of my life in California, 5 years in Minnesota. So what I'm trying to say is I am biased about Arkansas, right? until I met Brandy and like Carol and all these people, and I had like so many guests from Arkansas.
Mhm.
I thought I had I had like a very biased opinions or views about Arkansas.
Oh no, yeah, I had the same
So
thing before I moved here. So I mean, I totally understand that. And that's something where like unless you know people from Arkansas or you've been there,
mm,
you know, those stereotypes kind of just like override anything else from the state. Fayetteville is very much kind of like a trying to be like a hipster town. A lot of really cool coffee shops, a lot of cool bookstores. Very friendly vibe, very relaxed. Trying to be like very outdoorsy. So it's a pretty good town, and it's also because it's a college town too, with the University of Arkansas being basically the heart of Fayetteville. There's a lot of college students. There's a lot of people coming from out of town, out of state, who are living in the area, whether long term or short term. So with that, there's also a lot of apartments here. So District 8, there is on the southern end and the eastern end, there are a ton of apartments, a lot of rental units that are there. And then more in the northwest corner, there's more, single family housing, more of kind of established long-term residents, a little bit away from the campus. Yeah, my district is right on top of the university to the north of it. So there's a lot of rentals, a lot of apartments in that area, a lot of college age students who are living in that area. A good number of them are kind of, short term residents, and then some of them kind of evolve into long term residents, whether they just stay in that same apartment or they kind of move around in the area.
So a lot of like young demographic leaning towards sort of liberal, would you say?
I would say Fayetteville is pretty liberal. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some like, conservative spots. There's definitely a lot of conservative spots in Washington County, especially on the outskirts of it. But Fayetteville is pretty liberal, especially the closer to campus you are, the more liberal it's going to be, because that's kind of where all the young people are hanging out at. But yeah, it's pretty laid back, and it seems sort of like this oasis in the middle of a really rough part of the country, because we have Oklahoma to the west of us, we have Missouri above us, we've got Louisiana, Tennessee, all that are kind of dealing with some very archaic laws regarding abortion rights and trans rights and different things like that. And even though the state government here isn't very friendly, the local government here has been very friendly and very adapting to these communities here. It's still been hard, it's still been a challenge, but there's a lot of great activists here who have been trying to fight for years, to create as much of a inclusive and welcoming community as possible. So, I mean, I think that's kind of what makes Fayetteville and Northwest Arkansas a really great place, especially compared to other parts of the state that are not so friendly.
Okay, so Brandy's saying, okay, Fayetteville has even had a Green Party candidate in the city council.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a lot of very left-leaning people. I think in the 2016 election, I want to say there were more Bernie voters than there were Hillary voters during the Democratic primary there.
Interesting.
And I think for the 2020 election, it was very close between Biden and Sanders. So, I mean, there's very, very left-leaning, very leftist groups in Fayetteville and in Washington County.
So, I'm just gonna go into this question, like right into this question, because I can't really avoid it. So what, how do you think your identity as a transgender person, like way into your candidacy?
Well, yeah, I think that's a good question. I honestly don't know, because that wasn't something that I kind of advertised a lot or like promoted a lot, I guess. It was just something where I viewed myself as a candidate who happened to be trans, as opposed to a transgender candidate. So there were probably people who saw me as, this weird person, or viewed me as unfavorably because I am trans. But that wasn't anything that was like explicit or blatant that I faced. I didn't face any harassment based on that. I didn't face any like overt discrimination. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there were people like, kind of on the sidelines, like saying stuff or remarking different things. Because that's still like, even though Fayetteville is kind of trans friendly and there is a very sizable trans community here in Northwest Arkansas, parts of Washington County are very hostile towards the trans community, and it can be difficult for people sometimes.
Yeah. Actually, so I had like maybe a girl, who is running for Congress in my district in California, against Adam Schiff, and Daniel Wilson, who is running for California Assembly in Ventura County, which is sort of a Ventura County is kind of like a mixed demographic. It's part of it is rich, but other part of it is like farmland, so not working class. But anyhow, like they both said the same thing that you said. I guess and I guess it's natural because like, okay, so I'm not a politician or not an aspiring politician, but like me as an individual, like I am someone who happens to be transgender, right? Just as you said, like I have other, other things, other characteristics, other elements about, that make up me. So not like transgender is like not the only thing that I am. So, so both Maybe and Daniel did say that, they are just candidate who happens to be transgender, and they essentially like they campaign on issues, not the identity per se. So
that's a big thing that you really have to do as a candidate, is that it turns into stuff happening outside. It turns into basically trying to advertise yourself in a way that gets broadcasted to as many people as possible. So, in some areas that you have room to kind of, lean into a queer identity and, kind of emphasize that and bring up that, like, you are a marginalized person running for office, that you are facing challenges and you're trying to bring those issues to light. But at the same time, it's also very important to like focus mainly on the issues, so people are paying more attention to that as opposed to kind of the person behind that. Because I think once you bring in queer identities, marginalized identities, not to say that there's anything bad with it, but I think with such a broad population, it can cause kind of like a schism with voters, and that's been kind of the case we've seen across the country with conservative Democratic voters versus very liberal or left-leaning Democratic voters, is focusing a lot on electability and how this person fits into a mold of a politician. And so I think as a very left-leaning candidate or as a queer candidate, it becomes sort of it's a weird task where you have to kind of like tone yourself, and you have to kind of like get the messaging just right, so you appeal to as many people as possible and you focus on those issues and you mobilize people on those issues. I think that was kind of the hardest thing with campaigning, was it was a sudden realization of like, oh, I can't be completely unrestrained. I just can't go out and do whatever I want. I have to make sure what I'm saying is, according to what the campaign is going off of. It's on message. It appeals to as many people as possible. It's not going to be overly confrontational or cause, like friction or any problems like that. It's sort of balancing this weird line between being yourself and then being the candidate. And it's even rough for like when you're doing your own campaign, because you're basically your own campaign manager and you're criticizing yourself the entire time. Thinking, oh, am I saying this right thing? Do I have this right message? Am I going off message? Is this not enough? And trying to balance that, which can be, it can be cumbersome sometimes.
Yeah. Wow, that must be difficult. How long was your campaign? Like,
it was 3 months, February to May. Yeah. But it was funny because like it ramped up so quickly, because at the very beginning it was just like, oh, this is going to be kind of an easy campaign because I didn't know the incumbent that well, and a lot of people in my district and in the surrounding areas weren't really familiar with my opponent that well. And so I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of easy. And then it turned into, well, I need to do this, and then this, and then this. And then so many things started piling on. And then, pretty soon it became like a full-fledged campaign. Like it started out with just kind of creating a design and kind of an icon and just kind of like, thinking you can just like kind of converse with people and just kind of like word of mouth it. But then all of a sudden, once things start to pick up, once it gets close to the primaries, it gets a lot more serious. You have people contacting you left and right, asking you for different, positions on different policies. You have different groups wanting to talk with you. You have different events to go to. Maintaining a website, reaching out to different like vendors and clients and things like that, and it just becomes like you're almost running a business in a sense, where the product is yourself. You're like advertising yourself and these policies to try to get through. And that's one thing I didn't like about campaigning was that it felt like it turned a little bit too much into a business, like it was advertising, as opposed to just connecting with voters, reaching out to them, and talking about policy and things we can do to make the community better. That was my favorite thing with camping was talking with people, knocking on doors, talking directly with people, doing farmers markets, and just having an open conversation. That was my favorite part. But I didn't like the part where it was constant advertising. It was just trying to make yourself known and trying to look pretty and professional and all that.
Yeah. That's actually a good point because that's kind of what I saw, seeing my friend's campaign and like, as I said, him having to raise or being told that you have to raise so much money. And in order to raise money, like, he was being told that, yeah, you have to like keep calling people, you have to like keep asking money. And that's like, you have to like spend like 90% of your campaign time like doing that. And my reaction was like, well, wouldn't it be better for you to be like out there talking to people and not necessarily like asking for money, but it really is. I mean, my impression of it was like a running a business.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And that's another thing too, is like you kind of realize that like things get more time consuming than you expect. So like I was door knocking fairly early, and I had a friend who helped volunteered and knocked on doors with me. And after like 3 hours of doing one session, I was just like, I'm not going to hit every door. There's no possible way. I need more people. I need more time to do this. And then I started getting vendors contacting me saying, hey, we have this like texting system. We have a voter database. We have different things that you can reach out to people. And it started becoming a thing of, well, it makes more sense to invest money in this because there's no way that I can hit all the doors. But if I like buy this texting program, then I can text people directly. And then all of a sudden it becomes, well, I need more money to text more people. I need more programs to reach out more people. And it just becomes so time consuming. And then you realize that like you need so much money to get different things done. And it starts adding up so quickly. I think people who are brand new to campaigning, I think it surprises anybody of how fast everything accelerates and how costly it can get. And I think that's where like well-funded campaigns do really well because they have the capacity to buy all these resources and just distribute them in different ways and, maximize their reach to the voters.
Yeah, that's actually why I think the political campaigns should be like funded by the public dollars versus like private, because then it'll like level the playing field.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely after running this campaign, I'm absolutely in favor of like publicly funding campaigns and like getting money out, because after like running a grassroots campaign can put somebody in office and that can be successful. But we've seen time and time again, especially with larger campaigns, that like you basically need to have money to be effective and reach voters, and also just to compete against your opponents. So having that level playing field where we're not having to, worry about raising like $10 million just to compete against another person, where we are on the same page, I think that would be, a lot more fair, and it would give people a better opportunity to understand the candidates and make a more informed decision.
Mm-hmm. So, what would be your best advice to people who are, kind of curious about running for like any given office?
Yeah, so the two things I'd say is try to volunteer on a campaign if you can. It doesn't matter how big or small. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be like Nancy Pelosi's campaign or Bernie Sanders' campaign. It can be somebody running for city government or county government. Just kind of being in that presence and understanding how things work kind of gives you a good idea of what to expect. And then the other thing is just like, have fun with it. Go to these events, meet people, do different things, and just like try to find joy in it and find it exciting, because that makes the process a lot easier, and it helps you connect with the community more. I think when you see these different events and different projects as like a must or as a obligation, it weighs people down. It really like sucks a lot of energy out of you. But if you're finding fun in it and you're connecting with people and just like having a great time, it makes it so much easier, and it also like motivates people to kind of join your campaign too. If they see that you're excited, engaged, they're going to be excited too and help out as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think fun is very important because I think I've seen it happen like with again like with people that I know, like yeah, some people are very good at like running a fun campaign, and that really it's just, I guess it's very natural, because people gravitate towards that, I guess, that
Yeah,
energy, like positive and fun, and so yeah.
absolutely.
What's You kind of touched on this already, but what was your favorite moment during your campaign?
Oh, favorite moments. That's a good question. I have a lot. I think one that really sticks out was the I did a Marshallese Women's Conference,
Mm.
and there was an event up in Springdale, and went up there, and there was a table for the Democratic Party, just trying to get people to sign up to vote, and talking about local uh, candidates in the area. Trying to get people to turn out for the primaries and vote and stuff like that. And I walked in a little bit late, so I came in for like the last shift and to do the teardown for the table, and I instantly got like pulled aside by somebody saying, "Hey, do you know anything about fashion?" I'm like, "Not really." But like, okay, well, we need a judge for the fashion show, so like, I'm gonna recruit you for it. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go work the Democratic table. I'm given like a ton of food, which was like is real good food. Um, there was there's a ton of speakers talking about like Marshallese
Mm.
issues, about women's issues, like bringing together that culture. And then they had like a fashion show, and it was me and another Democratic candidate sitting at the very front of the conference at a table, and we had to judge these different groups kind of going on, like doing traditional garb, like their own different style and stuff like that. And it was fun because they were dancing, they were excited, and we got to have fun with it. And then announcing the winners, like seeing the excitement on their face, and like everybody having a good time. I think that
Mm.
was probably one of my favorite moments, and something that I'll take with the rest for the rest of my life. Just having a fun time, enjoying other people's company, and kind of learning about a new culture. That was
Mm.
one of my favorite points of it.
Yeah. Wow. Are there a lot of a lot of Marshallese in
Yes,
Arkansas?
yeah. We
Oh.
have a lot of Marshallese who live in Northwest Arkansas,
Mm.
um, a lot in the Springdale area. So, like my current job, I work with a early childhood education nonprofit, and we have a lot of Marshallese families. We're always looking for Marshallese speakers to work with us because, we're reaching out to that community, and a lot of them are in, very low socioeconomic conditions because of them, moving from their home directly to Arkansas and having to like, learn the language here, kind of like navigate society here and get accustomed to things. And so, that's definitely a population where like they've built up a solid home here, but they're still needing resources. They're still needing support. But yeah, they're very vibrant, very wonderful community here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, I actually did not know that. I knew like on West Coast, up in Washington and Oregon, I think they're pretty good size Marshallese communities. And I mean, as I said, like I do like anti-nuclear work, so yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay, I
yeah.
did not know that.
We actually have a Marshallese candidate who's running for quorum courts, Michael Napa, who um, I think I want to say he's from the Marshallese Island. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that some of his friends were talking about how like the nuclear testing was impacting their island and their families, and how like the United States government was doing these tests and they weren't really compensating or really doing anything to address like the health issues of this island. And Michael running as a Marshallese candidate, kind of bringing awareness to the community, but also trying to fight for resources for his community. And that was a campaign where like I'm trying to broadcast him as much as possible, talk about him, donate to him to make sure that he can be there, because he is a progressive candidate. He is a voice for the Marshallese community, and I think he'd be a great a great member of the Washington County government.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because it really, as you said, like that community really needs attention. Because it's, I mean, as you know, and as you touched on, I mean, what's been done to that community is just so horrendous. And I mean, this minuscule amount of compensation that they got is just really not. It's just not enough, and it's just horrendous that a lot of pain and suffering that people went through in that part of the world. It's not really acknowledged enough, and yeah, it's just something. And also, like I can't emphasize enough that, like, as you know, like that dome that they put on to um supposedly to contain the radiation in that area.
Yeah.
It's cracking now, so
Yeah.
that's like another thing too. Anyway,
No, I've heard that there's been leaks and stuff, and it's still impacting the community. Which
yeah, God, yeah. So anyhow, let me just kind of because I've been kind of trying to look at the comment, but not really doing a good job with that. So I'm just gonna look at the comments a little bit. So yeah, Brandy has been commenting a lot. So she's saying, I've been a third party voter since I was 18. Oh my God. Wow. Barney was literally my compromise. Oh, wow. Good for you, Brandy. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I think we need more people like Brandy in this country, because I get so turned off when people say things like, oh, if you vote for third party, your vote is being wasted. If you think like that, we will
that's
never.
unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, we will never, elect third party
Yeah, I mean that's
candidates.
an unfortunate design. Yeah, I mean that's an unfortunate design of that two-party system. It's just because like there are a lot of good third-party candidates, and I think it'd be good to get more parties in the system. But I think just because of like a lot of these parties don't have the financial support that the Democrats and Republicans do, it feels like you have to peel away a ton of voters to get to the third party. And there's so many people who are apprehensive about like, oh, if I vote third party, then my main party's not going to win. And I think that's causing a lot of issues with trying to get other voices in politics. Maybe switching to a ranked choice voting system or some sort of system that allows for multiple parties would be a lot better. But I think by design, it makes it near impossible for third parties to to be successful in campaigns, especially on the national level.
Yeah, you're right. And so Brandy is also saying, I think this is probably the her response to my question, like the best advice, I guess. So go to city or county meetings and know what the issues are that you're running for. Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's see. Okay, so this is probably with regards to the Marshallese community. We have the second largest community in the nation. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. So Oregon's number one. Thank you for educating me, Brandy. It's great. And this is probably the about the candidate you were talking about, Casey. My friend will.
Oh, yes.
That's great.
Yeah, I met him a couple times. He's a super cool person. He does so much great work in the area. He's actually helping out with Michael's campaign.
Mm,
So I mean,
great.
he's doing so much great things. He's doing fantastic work.
That's great. I really cannot wait to go to Arkansas and meet all of you guys, in person one of these
It's a
days.
great place, and there's a lot of great food here too. So you'll have to come visit.
Great, great. So I just want to shift the gears a little bit and talk about sex workers' rights. And well, okay, what inspired me was what you said in the previous show. And that was the moment that I said, "Oh my God, I have to bring you back." And but recently, what's getting a lot of attention in LA and I guess across the nation is that this particular strip club in Hollywood, um, and the workers, the strippers there are on strike, and they are looking to unionize. And apparently, it's been like decades. It's like the first time in decades, strippers are attempting to unionize. So there's really a lot of excitement around it, and they're getting a lot of support. So yeah, it just really caught my attention. And so a little bit of background. I was gonna play a video, but we are kind of running short on time, so I'm just gonna explain. So apparently there was a security concern at this particular strip club because there was a particular clientele uh, that was like making women uncomfortable, women who work for the club. So they actually alerted the management, but the management didn't take them seriously. They kind of like laughed it off. And then when I think women tried to press the issue, they fired two women, and that's when like they started to organize. And yeah, so that's the background. And so in California, because of the law that's passed, the okay, I didn't notice, but I guess strippers are usually, I guess, kind of like independent contractors. They
Yeah.
pay the establishment, sort of like a, I don't know, space fee, just like hairdressers do, I guess. But because of this law in California, uh, they are now considered as employees. So that kind of gives sort of the employers, like establishments, the clubs, sort of more opportunities to take advantage of them, abuse them, which is not a good thing. But so yeah, unionization is actually very much needed at this point. So yeah, so you were speaking of like touching upon like sex workers rights in the previous episode that we were together. So I just wanted to give you a space to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy. Well, across the board, I'm happy that we're seeing workers unionize, and I'm really excited to see that shippers are now starting to unionize too, because I think that's an industry that desperately needs unions. Um, there's very minimal protection. There's so much stigma surrounding sex workers that it's really hard for them to kind of like navigate, the workplaces and different aspects of society and just kind of get ahead. And like you said, that there are a lot of clubs that require a fee just to get on stage, especially like in very touristy areas. You could be paying $400, $500, $600 just to get on stage, and then you have to just work to try to get whatever money you can. And some people are very successful at it, and others just they're losing money over this. So having these protections to make sure that they are fairly compensated for their work, because it is labor, and also having those security concerns taken care of. A lot of clients, even though there are some great clients and there are some very respectful ones, there's also some very terrible people and some very violent people that can cause harm to sex workers. So I think having that security and having those safeguards for sex workers, for strippers, is absolutely critical for their well-being, and so they feel comfortable in the working environment too. I hope that this unionization effort spreads to other clubs. I know that for much of the U.S. it is an independent contractor type situation, which is pros and cons to that. But I think that strippers should be able to go to their workplace and not feel like their safety is in jeopardy or that their livelihood is in jeopardy. They have the resources they need, that they feel comfortable, that they can report different things to security and the managers, and that those issues are promptly resolved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as you said, there's really stigma in the profession and the other sex work. It's almost like when they're talking about security concerns, it's kind of like there's this like perception that, well, it's because like you are leading them on, or like because of your profession, that like you deserve like what you get or something like that, and which is such a heinous, really wrong view.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that also extends to like full service sex workers, or sex workers who are working on the streets, where protection for them is almost non-existent, especially because it's criminalized here in the United States. Is that a lot of they have to worry about their safety from clients. They have to worry about harassment from police officers. They have to face harassment from community members. There's so much that are happening there, and so to have any sort of security or any sort of like protection for them, it's absolutely paramount, and that's an absolutely important resource for them. Not just strippers, but for anybody who's engaged in sex work in any market.
Yeah. So Joe, how the heck are strip clubs charging strippers to strip? They make money for the club in themselves. That's I agree with you. Thank you.
Their argument, I think some of the club's argument is that like I think some of them argue that there's so many people who want to be on stage, and that you basically pay for the privilege or something like that, which is, it's really bizarre because like strippers are making the club a lot of money. A lot of that money comes off of the drinks that they sell, and also just like getting people in the door too. So it's so weird, and it's so harmful to sex workers and their ability to kind of like make enough for a living, that they have to pay just to walk on stage. And there may be some nights where they get on and nobody pays them anything, and they've just lost a couple $100, just for showing up, which, it's kind of messed up to show up to work and lose money.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And just like these, I was watching their video. The More Perfect Union made this video about this stripper strike, and it's like a 6 minute video. But in it, strippers are talking about like, without us, there'll be no business. Like they can't conduct business because it's a strip club. Without strippers, there's no business, right? So
Exactly.
They absolutely have the power, but actually that like really can be said for like any workplace.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's this like really weird psychology, and I experienced it too in a different industry. But it's kind of like a lot of like business owners try to play this part of like a benevolent employer. It's kind of like we are giving you jobs, and you have to be grateful, kind of thing. And I mean, and I had my boss say that to me, like the president of my company. You have to be grateful. Like, I'm giving you jobs. Okay, so while I was grateful that I have a job. But I mean, then again, like the service that I provide, without that, like he won't have a company, he won't have
Yeah.
a business. So I think we have to like, fix this kind of weird mentality of like business owner versus workers,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
somehow, yeah, there's a kind of like a slave mentality almost that,
Yeah. That was like I saw a news story about there was a cafe who organized into a union and the owner decided to close up shop and sell it, in
mm,
response to that. And then the workers turned around and they all collectively bought the coffee shop. And so now all the staff members own it. And so it's just like they effectively like pay a little money to get rid of their boss and now they manage the workspace that they work in. And I've seen people kind of argue that like, oh, how are they going to be able to run a business if they're just workers? Well, if you've ever worked in like fast food or any sort of cafe and stuff, you kind of do like most of the work anyways. You're already doing that. You're already familiar with everything. So it's not too hard to take on a couple of extra responsibilities and run it collectively as a group. I think at the end of the day, the workers, because they're working the front line and they're doing it so often, they know
mm,
the business better than most people do.
yeah, I agree. That's like another thing, that another perception that we have to, I think, combat, that people see workers, especially like people in power, I guess I should say,
Mhm.
see workers, quote unquote, as someone who do not have knowledge or intelligence to run a business, which is absolutely not true. Um, because as you said that, yeah, because they are actually on the ground doing the work every day. And also, like, I was actually a business consultant in a previous life, and I studied sort of like a good workplace, quote unquote. And actually, some companies, open their books to employees, like 100%, like total open book approach,
Mm. Yeah.
meaning that they know the profit that they are making, they know the cost, expense that they are spending, right?
Mm.
So in these workplaces where workers know everything, they have a clear perception of like what's costing them, and if they're not making enough profit, like why. I mean, they actually come up with ideas
Mm.
so that they can make profit, and which is brilliant. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
um
Also, like how many of like entrepreneurs start out as workers in their
right.
space and decide to branch off and open up their own business? I think it's just having that experience doesn't mean you're not qualified to run the business. You
Mm-hmm.
have the knowledge, you have the idea of what it takes to run it. And yeah, there may be some areas where somebody is not super savvy on. But if you're working with other people, there's definitely people who are going to know better in certain areas, and you can kind of work off of them and like learn to do better things and like be a better business operator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, what's Joe saying? Okay, Joe is saying, yeah, he's still saying about, I guess, strip clubs charging them. Just don't see how that's legal.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's another thing too with why it's so stigmatized is that because a lot of people view stripping and sex work as sort of lower end of the job, that a lot
Hmm.
of these managers can kind of get away with treating them worse off or demanding payment upfront. I
Hmm.
think one way we can support sex workers is just transforming their perspective on that and seeing them as just any ordinary person that's trying to make a living and trying to go through life. These are workers too. These are people who have their own lives and their own homes, their own families, and everything. And then shifting that perspective, so we see strippers and sex workers as the same as any other worker. I think that
Hmm.
can help and like change the culture around it. And hopefully things follow through and it gets a lot better for them.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, yeah. And I guess, okay, so I had last week, I had Aiden Hill, who ran for the mayoral office in Berkeley, California.
Mm.
And he is, I mean, they are actually primarily, I think, housing justice activist.
Mm.
And we kind of talked about, okay, so it's kind of okay, no brainer, I guess. I was gonna, like, I kind of caught myself right now. So I was gonna say, like, these issues that we talk about, meaning like housing justice, poverty, healthcare justice, fair wages, rights for workers, including sex workers.
Mm.
All these issues are actually like, we as a transgender community really deals with in a big way, because a lot of our poverty rate within our community is very high,
Yeah.
and a lot of people end up, unfortunately, like end up on streets.
Mm.
um, a lot of people, including some that I know, are struggling with getting healthcare that they need.
Mm.
So these are really, really like serious issues that we as transgender community deal with. And that's why, though, I guess, sort of like, if we kind of turn the argument around, I really feel that, advocating for transgender rights or
Mm.
discussing transgender rights is actually, discussing rights for everyone,
Yeah.
because we have the same issues, by varying degrees, but all these issues actually are um, relatable and transferable to any other communities.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, especially how things are going now. Like a lot of people who are living very comfortably are starting to kind of feel that crunch of not being able to afford housing costs or healthcare costs or different things like that. And,
mm,
definitely, the trans community and marginalized communities have felt the brunt of that for generations. And so kind of relaying to people, who are now starting to feel that economic crunch and, other issues too, is saying, hey, we've been in that position for so long. This is how we've gotten by. And then this is also what we need to do to
mm,
solve these issues and make it comfortable for everybody.
mm,
Because I think that's going to be a big thing in the near future is that a lot of people who seem very well off are starting to get into a very tough situation. Like I saw some news article that was like, people making $250,000 were saying that they're living paycheck to paycheck, and like they definitely have a lot more resources and assets available. But
mm,
I honestly wouldn't find that surprising because you know the way like the housing market's getting, the way that the cost of fuel and food is getting, that it's starting to
mm,
get so bad that even people who were living very comfortably and very well off are starting to kind of slowly feel that crunch. So trying to relate to people saying like, hey, now you're starting to feel what we're feeling, even if it's just a hint of it. This is what we need to do to solve this crisis. This is what we need to do to take action. I think kind of blanking on that and,
mm,
appealing to that will get more people to these issues to pay attention and then broadcast these issues too.
mm,
I definitely think that like there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of trans rights and trans protections and, making sure that these marginalized communities are not left out. Um, but as things get a lot more difficult, I think just honing in on housing justice, on economic justice is
mm.
going to get more people to pay attention and take action.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really, dearly hope that we will be able to unite on issues, instead of like seeing someone like, okay, so for instance, myself, like I am an immigrant, Asian, transgender, all these qualities. I mean, some people may not be very kind
Mm.
towards, but then, like, based on the issues that I deal with every day, I can actually relate to a lot of different, people who may not actually like me,
Mm.
as an immigrant or as a transgender person. But yeah, we can talk about, how difficult it is to live in the cities like LA and being able to afford or not being able to afford $3,500 dollar rent, right?
Yeah. Oh.
So yeah, I just really hope that we can unite. You can be united on issues and fight together, because that's at this point that's what we need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so Casey, I would like to give you a few minutes to talk about, like, if, because call to action is a big thing on this show. So if you have something that you wanna amplify people to know about, this is your time.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So I will say for people who are from Arkansas, definitely come out and vote. Vote Democrat. I know that a lot of people have different views of voting and the effectiveness of voting, but in conservative states like this, it's very important to get Republicans out of office to vote Democrats in, because this is going to be your best chance to protect the community and get some sort of legislation passed. Even if it's not perfect, it's still something. This November election, everybody's been saying it's very important. Pay attention who is actually pushing for meaningful policies, who's doing work on the ground. Support them in their campaigns, but also work with grassroots organizations. Voting is the bare minimum. That's what we can do to kind of have allies in government to run interference and do policy that help out the people. Meanwhile, it's important that we work on the ground. We work with local communities, local activist groups, mutual aid groups, so we have a support system for our people. So I absolutely encourage people to engage in both forms. Even if you don't think that one form is going to be as effective as the other, engaging in both of those, bringing awareness to issues, and also advocating for people who are actively helping out their community and being progressive. Those are the people that are going to be good for long term. So all I gotta say is just be aware, look out for people who are doing the good work, amplify them, work with them. Take time to rest too. You as an individual cannot do everything, but as a collective we can do everything. And so I just take time to rest, but we've got a long fight ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. These are like such words of wisdom. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you so
no,
much.
absolutely. Please, people, please vote.
Yeah.
I know like a lot of people are disappointed in politics right now, but you can't really stay out of voting.
And I and
This
I
is
and
like the
like the thing is,
precious
I
power that we
understand
have.
being in Arkansas and seeing some of the people running, it's not great. But even if you don't vote for Democrat, even if you're voting for other progressive people, getting out there and being active in the political sphere is the bare minimum. And then we can also do work on the ground. We can do both things at once.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much, Casey, and thank you so much, everyone, too. Like great comments, and I'm sorry I couldn't highlight them all. But I mean, yeah, thank you. Yeah, get involved in your grassroots, in the community, grassroots movement, and take care of yourself, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be well, be well. Thank you so much, Casey.
Yeah. Thank
It's
you
been
so much for having
wonderful.
me on.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. So that's it. That's all the time we have. But I just really dearly wish you, everyone, wonderful week. So thank you so much and see you next week. If I can find the outro.